Hello everyone, here we are for bonus session number 9 in our 8 days of awe. The 10 days of awe take place encompass from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur ended last night at sundown, but today we're going to talk about Mussar as a path of personal transformation. What have we learned from these days of self-reflection, and can we use this to move forward? And it all stems from this question. You might be able to guess what the question is because I'm holding it up here below. The question the rabbis were asking themselves 1,000 years ago, which is, why is it so hard to be good? There's all this wisdom in the Torah about how to be a good person, but somehow we can hardly go a day without slipping up or missing the mark in one way or another. So that's a question that I'm going to answer in a second. I'm also going to answer a question that came in. Somebody texted me or sent me a Facebook message with a question that they asked me to answer today. And what they said was, can Mussar help me with a relationship that I was hoping for that will probably never come to pass? And so we'll look at those two questions. Why it's hard to be good, Mussar for help with a relationship. And also we'll just talk about Mussar as a path to transformation. But first I want to talk about you. And by talking about you, I'm going to do that by talking about me a little bit, because I suspect you and I are the same in some ways. When I was in my 30s, I was not awake at all. Now it's funny, when I turned 20, I said, okay, wow, now I have all the answers. And then when I turned 30, I said, wow, when I was 20, I thought I had all the answers, but I didn't know crap. But now that I'm 30, I really understand what's going on. Well, by the time I was 40, I was starting to wake up a little bit. And then I was smart enough not to think that I had all the answers. And now that I'm 50, I've woken up a bit more. And as I've talked to a lot of you, this process can continue. As we grow older, we begin to understand just how far we have to go and how much there is to learn. Marianne Williamson, one of the great spiritual figures of the 20th and early 21st century, she told Oprah in an interview, she's like, well, now that I'm getting older, I can recognize my own craziness as craziness. So even someone who works a lot on personal transformation, on becoming our best self and becoming more awake, it is still a challenge to do that. What are the challenges that you're facing when it comes to transformation? What are the big things that are holding you back? For some people it's family-related issues. For some people it's self-esteem or lack of patience. There's certain things inside that get in the way of us from being our best self. Some people are obsessed with questions about what's the meaning of life, and that's a really interesting question. But if it gets to be such a big question, we can lose sight of the fact that life is going on like right before our eyes, and we might not even notice that it's there. So as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more awake, I've learned to appreciate just what a gift it is to be alive. We are just coming out of the season of Yom Kippur. There's a memorial service, and I think about just what a gift life is, and I just don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, this last year I lost two people who I knew really well. One was Steve Loveland. He died when he was 50 of throat cancer. Very real big shock for all of us. He was such a nice guy. He's one of my childhood friends, and although we haven't been in much contact this year, it was really a blow that he was gone. So another person was a friend of mine, Jane Bolander, who I met through her husband Jari. She's only 36 years old, died of leukemia. Absolute tragedy. Wonderful person. So just any of us at any age, we need to really take to heart that Jewish teaching that you want to live every day as if it's your last, because you just don't know when that's going to be. A couple of my high school classmates are gone. Ryan Short and Jennifer Whitehead. They died a couple of years ago. I mean, we just don't know what's gonna happen. Just this week, a freshman at my daughter's high school was killed by a train. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get all morbid talking about this, but it is important to remember, and we try to look away and we don't want to face this, but the reality is we don't know how long life is going to last. And we can look at a holiday like Yom Kippur as like a morbid time, and we wear white, which is how Jews are buried in a kittel, and it's almost a rehearsal for our own death. And you can look at that morbidly, or you can look at it as, wow, hey, I'm still alive, I'm still here, and I want to live life to the fullest. So when it comes to how do we make the most of our time, that's where Mussar can really help. And that's where Mussar can help us answer this question, why it's so hard to be good. Because if we look at something like, even something simple that most people know, I've heard of the Ten Commandments, hardly a day goes by when we don't slip up in one way or another. And it's not for lack of knowledge. In our head, we often know what the right thing is to do, but our heart doesn't seem to understand that. And that's what Mussar helps us do. It teaches the heart what the mind already knows. Now, in my book, there's a lot of Jewish wisdom. And in my book, which is right here, which you see backwards, Spiritual Practice of Good Actions, I have a whole chapter which I call the four assumptions to kind of help you get going with your backstory. You don't have to go to a yeshiva to kind of start to experience Jewish wisdom. So one of those assumptions is that we have a fundamental conflict inside between what's called the good inclination and the evil inclination. And I have to say the evil inclination is not a very good translation, but it's the best one that I've heard of until just recently when I heard a different translation, which is the hostile impulse. The evil inclination, it's all those things which can sit in our amygdala, in our primitive part of our brain, our fears, our sexual drives, our anger, our selfish survival impulses. And these are important and fundamental to who we are. But if they're not guided by our good inclination, our compassion, our empathy, our logic, our social impulses, they can run amok. And that's where we can get into trouble, is when we allow the evil inclination to have too much sway. And part of what Mussar allows us to do is to recognize when I'm feeling an impulse, when I'm going to act in a certain way, let me make a choice. Let me do this consciously. I'm just not going to zombie through my life. I'm not going to just ignore things that are going on. I'm going to start being mindful and paying attention. And I can choose. Sometimes we have what Rabbi Dessler called a behira point, or a choice point. We can choose to take the good path, or we can choose to take the not so good path. But at least let's make it a choice, and let's own it. And very often when we become conscious of these drives, when we become conscious of these things that are going on in our head, we're empowered to make better decisions. So for a Mussar practice, what we do is we systematically look inside at one soul trait at a time. And we've looked at many of these soul traits throughout these 8 Days of Awe event. We looked at humility, where we asked ourselves the question, am I enough? Am I occupying too much space in the world, or am I occupying not enough? And we go through 2 weeks focusing on humility, and we suddenly find ourselves making different kinds of choices. And then we'll focus for 2 weeks on patience. Are we beset by anger and frustration? Is driving in traffic just like, one frustration after another? Well, as someone who's in a very traffic-prone part of the country, there is nothing I can do about traffic. I can get angry and frustrated and pour gas on the fire by becoming which is all that anger and frustration is, or I can take this as an opportunity to practice patience. And I can let other cars merge in front of me. I can just listen to books or listen to the radio. And that extra time can become a gift. It can become a joy. And these are the choices we have. That frustration and anger in traffic, that is a choice that we can wake up and become conscious to. And once we do that, especially when we have something like Mussar, which is a guide and a practice, can help us move in another direction. I want to answer the question that came in earlier, which is, okay, this person who wrote to me has a relationship that we're really hoping was going to happen, but it feels like it isn't. And so much of life is like that. We get these disappointments. We end up brokenhearted, either because the love is unrequited, or a hurricane shows up and destroys our house and destroys our community. And everything that we hoped for and that we thought was going to happen doesn't take place. Well, part of what we learned on Yom Kippur, and part of what we learned in these days, is that our quest in life is for holiness. It says in the Torah, God tells Moses to teach the children of Israel, you shall be holy because I am holy. So if you aren't sure about the divinity, just roll with me here for a minute, because maybe you can think about it as nature, maybe you can think about it as the world. There's something greater, there's something better that's out there. And that's like a state of perfection. And we have an opportunity to move toward that state. It doesn't say that that state is holy, and we have the opportunity to become holy. We can work towards that. And that's by working on ourselves. Another way to think about holiness is wholeness, is bringing healing or completeness to ourselves. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Korzik said, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. There's just something about being brokenhearted that can bring the world into focus. It's part of the human condition. So, what do we do when we're in that situation? How can Mussar help us? Well, there's a line from the Yom Kippur liturgy, which is something like, we have an opportunity, we can be written in the book of life, or we can be written in the book of death. And it doesn't mean like literal death. I mean, it could. Some of us aren't going to be here a year from now. But it could mean spiritual death, it could mean a not great situation. But it says, but with repentance, prayer, and righteous giving, we can lessen the severity of the decree. So that means that when things don't go our way, by taking action, especially think about like the acts of charity, like doing something for other people. It can be practicing the soul trait of honor, it can be practicing the soul trait of loving kindness. If we're not finding love in that direction where we were hoping to get it, we maybe can look to do some things for other people. We can heal ourselves by finding connections for people that need help even more than we do. One of the people who wrote to me, and I had a correspondence, she's in a very difficult situation because her daughter-in-law doesn't get along with her, and that's challenged the relationship with the son, and all of a sudden she doesn't get to see her grandchildren, and so she calls it mitzvah therapy, is doing things for other people. There's something inherently healing about that. And this is a very Mussar approach, and it's a very Jewish approach. It's all about taking action. It's not about withdrawing from the world. It's not about sitting on top of a mountain and meditating and thinking about how things could be better. It's by getting in there and mixing it up in the messiness of the world as it is today and finding, okay, well, how can I be a better person so I can make a better contribution? So, my heart goes out to you if you're feeling, for whatever you're feeling brokenhearted about right now. I have been brokenhearted in romance. I have been brokenhearted in my career. I've been brokenhearted in my family situation. You know, I don't ever talk about my childhood. There's a reason for that. But all we can do is keep going. Is we can reach out to people around us, and try to find additional connections and ask for help and find support and meaning to go forward. So I would ask you again to just take a moment and think about, what is it, if you participated in Yom Kippur, what is it that you learned about yourself? Was there any pattern to the kinds of mistakes that you made last year? What soul traits, what midot might be in play for you? And what is it that you are going to do differently in this new year of 5778? So that when we get to Yom Kippur in 5779, we're not asking for forgiveness for the same things in the same way, that we've grown just a little bit. And the Mussar way is to start with just one small concrete change. So what is a small change that you can take? Which soul trait are you going to focus on, and how are you going to do that? You know, if we've had an issue with rudeness, maybe we can practice honor a little bit. You can do a practice like praise 3 people a day. That's a good one. You know, patience, allow other people to merge in front of you. Whatever it may be, I'd love to hear it. Please feel free to message me. Let me know what you're working on, and let me know how I can help. And I wish you a happy, healthy, and awake New